He was just trying to earn enough to fix his son's broken sneakers when he rang the wrong doorbell. But when the woman inside opened the door, looked him up and down and said, "I was actually hoping for you," his life veered into a storm of secrets, redemption, and the kind of love that no money could ever buy. This isn't just a delivery mistake, it's a story of second chances, buried pain, and one quiet act of kindness that changed everything. Let's begin. It was the kind of late spring afternoon that made sidewalks sweat and engines stutter. Liam Mercer wiped a streak of dried sweat from his brow, clutching a brown paper bag tightly to his chest as he checked the house number one more time. 1742 Camille Drive. But his GPS glitched again, flickering like it always did in this neighborhood. He was a delivery guy for a small local grocery co-op, juggling part-time shifts and odd carpentry gigs to keep the lights on. The divorce, the custody battle, and the collapsed construction company had wrecked him 2 years ago. But his 9-year-old son, Carter, needed school shoes more than Liam needed pride. He climbed the steps of the neat brick house with the pale blue shutters, rang the bell and waited. The door swung open, and a woman with wet hair pulled back into a loose bun stood barefoot in the entryway. She wore a grey t-shirt knotted at her hip and a pair of faded denim shorts. Her eyes, green, sharp and, a little tired, moved from the bag in his hands to his face. Liam offered a polite nod. "Delivery from Green's Market." She tilted her head slightly, frowning. "I didn't order anything today." Liam glanced at the receipt taped to the top of the bag. "Name says Annabelle Shaw. That's you, right?" A pause. Then she did something he didn't expect. She gave him a small, crooked smile, stepped back from the doorway and said, "I was actually hoping for you." Liam blinked. "I what?" She motioned him inside. "Come in. You're sweating through your shirt." "Ma'am, I think I've got the wrong address." "No, you don't. Not for what matters," she replied softly. Her tone wasn't flirty. It wasn't suggestive. It was something else, something honest, kind even. Liam stood frozen in the heat. It wasn't like he got invited into people's houses. Definitely not by women who looked like Annabelle, calm, pretty, and carrying. That air of someone who'd lived through more than she let on. Still, he stepped inside. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and lavender tea. There were 2 mugs on the table, one half empty, and a stack of papers beside a slim laptop. A dog snored in the corner. Annabelle set the bag on the table and said, "You're not here for groceries, Liam Mercer. You're here because you look like someone who needs to sit for 5 minutes without pretending everything's fine." He stared at her. "How do you know my name?" She turned her laptop toward him. The co-op's delivery log was open. His name, face, and route were right there. Liam exhaled. "So you're not psychic," she grinned. "No, just observant." For a second, something raw twisted in Liam's chest. This wasn't normal. This wasn't routine. But something about this moment felt different. Safe. He sat, unsure why. Maybe because the kindness didn't come with strings. Annabelle poured him a glass of cold water. Her hands trembled slightly. Liam noticed. "So," he said, trying to cut the awkward. "You often let random delivery guys into your house?" She gave a half laugh. "Only the ones who look like they're about to break in half." He smiled for the first time in days. She sat across from him and said gently, "What happened to you, Liam?" He opened his mouth to brush it off, but the words didn't come. Instead, he said the quiet part out loud. "My son's shoes have holes. I've got 3 jobs and 0 luck. My ex wants to move Carter to a different city. I'm losing everything." Silence. Then she said something he didn't expect. "I used to have everything, and I lost it all in one weekend." He looked up. She wasn't blinking away tears. She was steady, like someone who'd already cried and moved past it. "You want to talk?" she asked. Liam didn't nod, but he didn't say no. The sun had dropped a little lower when Liam finally stood to leave, clutching the now empty water glass like it meant something. But as he reached for the doorknob, Annabelle said quietly, "Wait." He paused. She opened the bag he'd brought and pulled out a small box of granola bars, a carton of oat milk, and a jar of peanut butter, none of which she ordered clearly. She turned the receipt toward him again and shook her head. "This delivery wasn't even mine." Liam blinked. I swear, I checked it. I scanned the wrong barcode or something." Annabelle looked him in the eye. "It wasn't a mistake." There was a pause. "You want to hear something crazy?" she added, stepping toward him. "I've been watching the deliveries in this neighborhood. You're always on time. You're always polite. You helped the old guy at the end of the street bring in his paper. You tied a kid's untied shoelaces. 2 blocks down last week when he almost tripped." He frowned, confused. "I sit here every day," she said, touching the edge of her kitchen counter, "wondering if today's the day I stop hiding." Liam's expression sharpened. "Hiding from what?" She took a breath, the kind that tastes like truth. "I was a lawyer," she said. "Corporate, big firm. I used to win cases worth millions. I lived on the 34th floor. I had a fiancée. I had a future." Liam stood still. Her voice didn't break, but it bent. Then came the headlines. Then the scandal. "My fiancé took bribes, used my login credentials. I didn't go to jail, but I lost my license, my apartment, my name, everything." Her hands curled into fists, but not out of anger. "Regret. I came here to disappear," she whispered, "until today, when some exhausted, kind stranger stood at my door and reminded me that not everyone walks away." Liam looked down, unable to speak. It wasn't often someone saw through him, and it wasn't ever that someone let him see them. Then something snapped in him, a decision. Maybe it was the silence in her voice, or maybe it was the way her dog hadn't barked once. "You know what?" he said, setting the glass down. "Let me fix your screen door." Annabelle blinked. "What?" "You've got a bent hinge. I saw it when I walked in. Makes it slam too hard. Probably annoying as hell." She gave a small, involuntary laugh. "You want to fix my door?" "I fix things," he said, shrugging. "Mostly cars, sometimes furniture. Once I fixed a broken old soda machine with a fork and a hair tie. Doors aren't a problem." Annabelle crossed her arms. "Why would you help me?" He didn't even hesitate. "Because you didn't treat me like someone to pity. You offered me water, not judgment." He walked out, returned 2 minutes later with a small toolkit from his truck, and in 20 minutes her screen door opened and closed without a sound. When he packed up, she stood beside the doorway with her arms folded. "You didn't have to." "I know." She tilted her head. "You want to come back tomorrow?" He raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Annabelle's voice was careful even. "I don't know yet, but maybe to talk. Or fix the shelf in my laundry room, or let me meet the little boy behind those eyes." Something inside Liam, some piece of bruised pride, exhausted faith, shifted. "I'll think about it," she smiled. "Good. I'll be here." He turned and walked down the steps, past the yard where wild dandelions grew. But her voice followed him, soft but sure. "Hey, Liam!" He turned. "I wasn't kidding earlier. I was hoping for you." He didn't answer, but he smiled all the way back to his truck. The next morning, Liam woke up before the alarm even buzzed. His old bones ached from the truck shift he pulled late last night, but something deeper, something wired into his gut, told him today would be different. Not harder, not easier, just different. Carter was still asleep on the pull-out mattress in the living room. The boy's tiny socked foot hung over the edge, a testament to how much he'd grown without warning. Liam stood for a moment, watching his son breathe. Cheeks smushed against an old Spider-Man pillowcase. The kid was all he had, and maybe it was time Carter saw that not everyone walked away. Liam packed the lunch bag, tossed in the leftover mac and cheese from last night, grabbed 2 waters and scribbled a quick note for the co-op to say he'd be an hour late. By 9:45, they were Standing outside Annabel Shaw's pale blue shuttered house, Carter tugged on his hoodie. "Dad, who is this lady again?" "She's someone who offered me a glass of water when she didn't have to," Liam said quietly. "That counts." Carter stared at him for a second, then shrugged. "Okay." Annabel opened the door before, and they could knock. She looked different, not in a made-up way, but in a cleaned-up kind of peace. Her hair was down, soft around her shoulders, and she wore jeans and a sunflower yellow tee that brought color back into the hallway. "Morning," she said, eyes settling on Carter. "You must be the famous kid I've heard nothing about." Carter looked startled, then smiled, one of those shy, lopsided grins he only gave to people who meant it. They stepped in. Her dog thumped its tail twice against the floor but didn't move from its spot. The scent of fresh pancakes drifted in from the kitchen. Annabel turned to Liam. "I hope I didn't overstep. I made extra. I didn't know if you'd come." Liam shook his head. "You didn't overstep. You just opened the door." They sat down, and for 20 golden minutes it felt like the world wasn't broken, like coffee and conversation were enough to fix the cracks until Carter asked a question no one saw coming. "You used to be a lawyer, right?" Annabel nodded slowly. "Yeah. Why?" Carter tilted his head. "Did you ever work with a lady named Camille Doyle?" Liam's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Annabel blinked. "Camille Doyle," Liam repeated under his breath. "His ex, Carter's mother." Annabel set her fork down carefully. "Why do you ask?" Carter shrugged. "Mum used to say your name, like when she was on the phone. I think she was mad at you." The room shifted. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was thick, crawling with memory. Annabel leaned back in her chair. "Camille Doyle," she repeated. "I knew her. She interned under me once. Ambitious, clever, ruthless, even back then." Liam's face tightened. "She said she'd left corporate law because of toxic leadership. Said someone above her sabotaged her casework and reputation. She used it in court against me. Said the stress made her an unfit mother for a while." Annabel exhaled, slow and steady. "She was the one who leaked my firm's internal documents. It wasn't her fiancé, it was her. She framed me and walked away clean." Liam stared at her. Annabel looked him dead in the eyes. "I didn't know until after I lost everything." Carter looked between them, confused, but sensing the weight of what had landed. Liam leaned forward. "Why didn't you say anything? Why now?" Annabel's voice cracked just barely. "Because I didn't want you to see me as a victim. I wanted you to know me, now. Not as a scandal, not as someone bitter, just as someone who's still here." Liam stood slowly, pacing once, then twice. Rage and clarity and confusion warred in his chest. "So all this time, my ex ruined your life, and I had no idea." "And I never blamed you," she said softly. "I saw your name on the delivery schedule and almost shut the door, but then I saw your eyes. You were just like me, someone trying to keep their kid afloat." Liam stared at her, really stared, and in that moment something shifted again. Trust, maybe, or something close enough. "You still want to fix my shelf?" she asked, almost smiling. He nodded. "Only if you promise to stop eating peanut butter straight out of the jar while pretending you're fine." Annabel laughed, a real unguarded sound. From the corner, Carter looked between them, then whispered, "I like her, Dad." Liam reached over and ruffled his son's hair. "Yeah, buddy," he whispered back. "Me too." The sky turned grey 2 days later, not from rain but from something heavier, the kind of day where even the wind seemed cautious. Liam hadn't returned to Annabel's since the breakfast with Carter, not because he didn't want to, but because something in him stirred uneasily. He'd spent most of the past 2 nights thinking, replaying everything. The coincidence, the past, the fact that Annabel knew Camille, that Camille had ruined her, and now, after all this time, The two stories had quietly collided inside one ordinary house with a bent screen door and lavender tea. That morning, while tightening the brake pads on a neighbor's car, his phone buzzed with a blocked number. He hesitated, then picked up. "Liam Mercer," said a voice he hadn't heard in almost 6 weeks, sharp, cold, and calculated. "You might want to brush up on your courtroom etiquette." He stepped away from the car. "Camille, I filed a motion to revisit Carter's custody. You're unstable, underpaid, and exposing our son to strangers with criminal records." Liam's hand curled into a fist. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I know where you've been, who you've been spending time with. You might think your little rehab project is endearing, but I'll make sure a judge doesn't see it that way." He felt the blood rush to his ears. "Annabelle? She was talking about Annabelle. You ruin her life, and now you want to use her to ruin mine?" "She's poison," Camille snapped. "Always was. And if I have to bring that up in front of a judge, I will." The line went dead. Liam stood there for a full minute staring at the street. Then he turned, got in his truck, and drove straight to Camellia Drive. Annabelle opened the door before he knocked, like she'd been waiting. "I know," she said before he could speak. "She called me too." He stepped inside, pacing. "She's trying to take Carter." Annabelle nodded, eyes calm. "I figured she would. She says you've got a record, that you're unstable." Annabelle's mouth tightened. "I don't have a record, but I do have enemies. Your ex made sure of that." Liam turned to her. "Then why aren't you fighting back? Why aren't you angry?" "I am," she whispered. "But I won't let her drag me into another pit. Not again." He sat down hard on the couch. "I can't lose my son. I swear, Annabelle, I can't." She stared at him for a long moment, then walked to her bookshelf, pulled out a narrow envelope. "I didn't think I'd ever need this," she said, handing it to him. "But if she forces your hand, you'll use it." Liam opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten, signed, official. It was a confession. Camille Doyle, under pressure and desperation, had admitted in therapy to leaking her firm's documents under Annabelle's name. And the therapist, fearing liability, had written a sealed statement. It had never been used, never been submitted. It was dated 3 years ago. Liam stared at it like it was a burning match in his hands. "She said this in therapy?" he asked, voice shaking. Annabelle nodded. "And her therapist, a good person, sent me that the day after she retired. She said she couldn't carry the guilt anymore. And you never showed this to the court?" "I didn't want revenge," Annabelle said. "I wanted peace. But now she's come after Carter." Liam set the letter on the table like it was made of glass. "I can take this to my lawyer." Annabelle's voice was soft. "Then do it. Protect your son." His jaw clenched. "What?" "About you." She gave him a look he didn't expect. Steady, certain. "I already lost everything, Liam. But if helping you saves Carter, then maybe it wasn't all for nothing." He looked at her. This woman, framed, discarded and still standing, was offering up the one card she had left, and she was doing it for his child, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. "I don't understand you," he said hoarsely. Annabelle gave a half-smile. "Most people don't." He stepped forward, stopped, then slowly took her hand. "You're not poison," he whispered. "You're the antidote." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Liam hadn't worn a suit in over 3 years. It didn't fit quite right anymore, tight across the chest, a little loose at the sleeves. But when he stood in front of the mirror that morning, he straightened the collar, fixed the crooked tie, and whispered to his reflection, "We fight today." Carter waited by the door, nervous in his wrinkled button-up. Liam knelt beside him. "You okay, buddy?" Carter nodded. "Is Miss Annabelle coming?" Liam smiled gently. "Not today, but she helped more than you know." He didn't say how. He didn't need to. Carter was a smart kid. When they stepped into the courtroom, Camille was already seated, polished, professional, the picture of maternal stability. She offered a stiff nod to the judge and barely looked at Liam. Her attorney began painting Liam as unstable, inconsistent income, overworked, emotionally unreliable. Then Camille took the stand, voice sugar-dipped in concern. "I only want what's best for my son. His father associates with unstable individuals. I'm afraid Carter's environment isn't healthy anymore." Liam didn't flinch, because he had the letter. When his turn came, he stood, no lawyer, just his voice, his truth. "I'm not perfect," he began. "I'm tired, I'm broke, but I'm present every day. My son doesn't need perfect. He needs me." He paused, pulled out the envelope. "And as for the claims about the woman I've been seeing, the truth is, Camille knows her. In fact, Camille once destroyed her life." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Liam handed over the letter. "This is a sworn statement from Camille's former therapist. It proves that years ago she leaked sensitive legal documents and framed another woman to protect her career, the same woman she's now accusing of being dangerous." Camille's face went pale. Her attorney tried to object. Hearsay, inadmissible, irrelevant. But the judge held up the letter and read it, slowly, word by word. When she finished, she looked at Camille sharply. "Miss Doyle, did you disclose any of this in prior custody filings?" Camille's voice cracked. I didn't think it was relevant," the judge finished. "This speaks directly to your credibility." Silence swept through the room like a cold wind. The hearing ended swiftly after that. The judge ruled in Liam's favor, full custody, with provisions to ensure Carter's emotional stability, including therapeutic support. Camille's visitation would be limited, supervised outside. As they stepped into the parking lot, Carter squeezed his dad's hand. "You think she's mad?" Liam looked down. "Maybe. But sometimes the truth hurts before it heals." He didn't take Carter home immediately. Instead, he drove back to Camellia Drive. Annabelle was in the garden, pulling weeds in an old hoodie and rain boots that didn't match. When she saw Liam's truck, she stood slowly, brushing dirt from her knees. "Well?" she asked, breath tight. He held up the court document. "We won." She blinked. "You used it?" "I needed to," he said. "But not just for Carter." She tilted her head. "Then for who?" "For you," he said quietly. "For what I did. You didn't get your day in court, but today she had to live with it." Annabelle stared at him, and then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Not desperate, not romantic, just real. Carter leaned out the window and yelled, "Hey, Miss Annabelle!" "We won," she smiled at him, eyes glistening. "I'm so proud of you." That night they all had dinner together. 3 people, broken in different places, patched in different ways, sitting around a small wooden table with chipped edges, and warm laughter. Annabelle made lasagna from scratch. Carter talked about his science project. Liam fixed a leaky pipe under the sink. The door never slammed again, and for the first time in a very long time, no one felt like a guest in their own story.